Well, dangerous animals, in the areas that I served, I didn't run into a lot of it, so I don't have much about that. Other than just, if it's a dog, face it down. Usually they'll run away. If it's a pit bull, climb a tree. Because they had some big pit bulls down there. And you don't want to mess with those guys. As for crime, I never got assaulted or anything, but I met plenty of missionaries who were. And they would just tell me, just carry the books. That's all you need. Don't carry your camera with you, because that's all they're after. They just want the money. They want it now. So carry 5 or 10 reais with you at all times, so that you have something that you can give them. If you have a nice watch, they may come after that. My watches were just pieces of crap. Half the time I didn't use one. And then just basically in general, after about, I want to say 6:30-ish, you want to kind of steer clear of the areas, just like the ghetto, the little alleyways. You kind of want to steer clear of those. I mean, if I had a lot of my investigators that lived in those areas, so I would go into them regular. So the people knew who I was, basically. They wouldn't mess with me or anything. After about 9:30, there's nothing really to work. There's no work out, and it's kind of getting a little more dangerous. The assaults usually happen about that time. Actually, my last area, about halfway through the transfer, the police and the drug lords were having a drug war down there. So the police would just say, yeah, be back in your apartment by 9 o'clock. Anybody who's out, you run the risk of getting shot. So it's just, okay, just pay attention to the Spirit. He'll tell you more than anything else what to do, where to go. If you're ever confronted, just go with it. Sometimes you may be able to talk to the guy. I heard some stories about, like, the people, they would be assaulted. They would lose what they had, the 10 or 15 reais, their watch, maybe the camera and the cell phone that the mission gave them. But then the guy would also grab one of their bags. All they've got in their bag is the Book of Mormon. And maybe he would go back and he'd just be curious. He'd start reading it. And I heard a couple of stories that these guys, they would come back and they would return the stuff they'd stolen. And then they would want to be baptized. So it was basically, it's just follow what the Spirit says. He'll guide you on what you need to do. Just don't put yourself into situations where he has to leave you. I mean, most of the time you won't spend it out where the wild ones live. All of the areas are in a city. Maybe it's a small city, but they're all in a city. You kind of have to go outside to see the wildlife. You might run across the crocodiles in the city, but they're just going to be 2 feet long, 3 feet long at the maximum. So, I mean, they're good sized, but they can't really get you. The snakes in the city aren't that big. They're maybe 6 or 8 feet long. So it'll be about a 50-pound snake, but it's not big enough to kill you. Especially because literally when you're a missionary, you're never alone. You got the Spirit with you, you got your companion, and everybody in the road would help out. There's very few areas where it would actually happen, like an animal attack, unless it was just a dog. And then literally they would be after the dog, and whatever happens, happens. Other than that, there's just not much. Just kind of mind your business and they won't bother you too much. I never was bothered by animals. At least in Manaus, the first rule of thumb is never drink water from the tap. I think the other guy from the video mentioned that. Never drink water from the tap. That'll nail you every time. You'll have diarrhea for 3 days, and it's not fun. Outside of it, there's a couple of cities. Ji-Paraná, I drank water from the tap all the time because we could. It was filtered. It was pretty clean. And then just health and sickness. Most of the diseases that I ran across were they were mosquito carried. So a mosquito repellent is good, but at the same time it won't deter all of them unless you get one of the really, really strong ones. And then it's also a people deterrent. It really stinks. So in our apartments, we would always have a fan. and we would just always keep that blowing on us because it would keep the mosquitoes away more than anything else. So we might be sleeping, we just turn the fan on, have it blowing on us all night. It would keep 90% of the mosquitoes away. Also, it's kind of a seasonal thing. When I got dengue, it was just the seasonal thing. It was the second year that dengue had been in the city, and funny story, it was actually a missionary who brought it there. He got sick with dengue in Manaus, didn't know what it was, got transferred there, got sick. Everybody, mosquitoes were biting him, transferred it, and everybody got it. Just kind of be smart about it. If you can, stay in areas that are relatively mosquito free, but you're never going to be in one that is entirely. So just keep a bug spray with you, or just be ready to swat. And you'll have to swat a lot. The dengue definitely is not fun. It's one of those tropical diseases, like the stereotype. Basically, it just makes you hurt a lot, and you have a high fever. Like your joints hurt, your muscles, your bones, everything hurts. You just don't feel like moving because it hurts too much. The fever gets up to about 101 degrees, somewhere in there. Sometimes it gets higher. So it's a pretty high fever. And for me, it just knocked me down for 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks flat. I couldn't get out of bed. Also, you lose your appetite really, really fast. You don't feel like eating anything, drinking anything. I think for those 2 weeks, about the only thing I ate and drank, I drank water. That was about it. Or coconut milk was one of the better things to drink. And then just crackers. That was about the only thing I could eat. I ate like 2 sleeves of crackers that big in about 2 weeks. So I lost a lot of weight when I got sick. And I wasn't the only one who got sick in that apartment. While I was there were 4 of us in the apartment. I was just the first one to go down. So I went down, I got better. I was still kind of weak, and then one of the other guys got sick. He was down for 2 weeks. He got better, he was still kind of weak, so at this time we were kind of splitting up the duties, because we'd have one guy stay in the apartment with the sick dude, and the other 2 would go out and try to cover both areas. It was just hard to keep track of 2 areas, because my area, we were working a lot with some of the members to keep after our investigators, and it was the same thing in the other area. I think for that time, we were trying to cover over 30 active investigators. It was just really, it was really hard to keep track of everybody. So it was just kind of a cycle thing. After I left, I got better. Other than that, I never really got sick. You do have to watch out for dehydration though. It's really muggy, so you wouldn't think you'd dehydrate fast, but you really do. You sweat like a pig. Our mission president's wife told us drink at least 3 or 4 liters of water a day. If you're not drinking that much, it's not enough. You need to drink that every day. It's kind of hard for them to get through the clothing in general. They only really come out early in the morning, about 4 to 6 or 7-ish, and then from about 6 until 9 at night. During the late night, they're not out, and in the day, it's just they hide. I don't know where, but they hide. They just disappear. As for clothing, they tend to go more after like the arms, because it's just an easier target. They would go after like anything outside of the collar and the sleeves. They would go after it. Sometimes they go after your knees and everything because the clothing kind of fits a little tighter there. So you just kind of gotta keep a little alert. But after a while, I didn't care anymore. I didn't even notice when they would bite. I was like, oh, hi. So you kind of adapt to life. Brazilians, they're just so adapted to it. I don't know how they did it, but it's like the mosquitoes don't even bother with them anymore. They only go after the new Americans. I never did. One of my zone leaders did, but it was kind of one of those transition things. I was in Ji-Paraná. It was just me and my companion and the zone leaders that were in the city, but we lived in different apartments on opposite sides of the city. So, and it was a 5-week transfer. It was a shorter one. So I was just there. I was working in my area, and then he got sick. But it was during that time that they went back to Manaus. So they went back to Manaus like the end of the first week of the transfer. Just took off. They came back 4 days later. They kind of gave us the overview, and then they took off to go down to Villiena, which is the other district in the zone. And like literally during the next 3 weeks, up until like the last week of the transfer, I really didn't see him. So I don't know much about the parasites. I just know they aren't fun.